are live on the streaming service on Facebook and YouTube. This is Sunday, January 30th, 2022. It is a very, very cold and blistery day today. We are very happy to be inside, warm, and next to a spiritual fire that we're going to start today with Essan and William and Jeremiah here right now, getting ready to warm up. Before we do that, I want to introduce that it is our session number 27, and we're going to be starting the reading of paragraphs 59 through 62 of Advent of Divine Justice. Now, before we proceed with that, we want to first say our opening prayer, and Jeremiah will be pulling it up, the prayer for the southern states of the United States of America. And while he's pulling that prayer up, I want to briefly describe, this is content we're providing from the Crimson Academy and our very own Ehsan Bayat, the progenitor of the Crimson Academy materials. He is here to present this for us, and we're so grateful. As one who may have watched the Crimson Academy materials, he's actually provided some updates to his materials, which we're very grateful to have. As he continuously updates his materials, we recommend that you definitely continue watching this series, and we're going to continue until the end of this beautiful book, Advent of Divine Justice. With that being said, dear Scott, would you be willing to say the opening prayer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh my God, thou seest me in my lowliness and weakness, occupied with the greatest undertaking, determined to raise thy word among the masses, and to spread thy teachings among thy peoples. How can I succeed unless thou assist me with the breath of the Holy Spirit? Help me to triumph by the hosts of thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into lights and suns. O my Lord, assist me with thy triumphant and effective might, so that my tongue may utter thy praises and attributes among all people, and my soul overflow with the wine of thy love and knowledge. Thou art the omnipotent and the doer of whatsoever thou willest.
Dear Ehsan, we're ready to start the presentation, and we thank you again for beginning this session 27 of Advent of Divine Justice.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you very much, William, also known as Scott. Thank you so much for our opening prayer. Okay, so dear friends, let us get back into our session. We're covering paragraphs 59 through 62. And in these paragraphs, now the beloved guardian is talking about this twofold crusade, this double crusade, which is the transformation of the inner life of the Baha'i community, and next to take on the long-standing entrenched evils of the greater community. So a double crusade. First, the transformation of the American Baha'i community, the Baha'i community, and then the second part of the crusade is to take on the long-standing evils of the greater community. So, dear friends, we were talking about this in our last session, and this we're going to pick back up where we were. Okay. This is a paragraph coming from a letter of the beloved guardian, Shoghi Effendi, to an individual believer, December 12th, 1942. And in these paragraphs 59 through 62, the beloved guardian is really stressing the transformation of the inner life. So I've pulled some apt quotes, not only from the beloved guardian, but also from the central figures to really hit home, dear friends, the importance of the transformation of the inner life, how important it is. So this is a letter written on behalf of the beloved guardian, dated 12 December 1942, and it highlights the various aspects of the revelation of Baha'u'llah that affect the inner life of the individual. And dear friends, this is, if there's only one thing you get out of this entire presentation, and we're at the 27th now presentation per se of the Advent of Divine Justice, this 27th session. And God knows this might go to 40th session or 50th session, whatever, right? But if there's only one thing you get out of this whole thing, it should be this: the transformation of the inner life. That you got to put in work, dear friends. And how important that work is for the transformation of the inner life. It will affect a change in the greater society. First, through transformation of your family, then your friends, and through your community, your Baha'i community. And through that will affect a transformation in the greater society. So this, my dear friends, is at the very crux of what the Advent of Divine Justice is about. Change. This is what the Baha'i faith is about. So this is a beautiful, beautiful extract from the beloved guardian. He states, "The teachings of Baha'u'llah are so great and deal with so many aspects of the inner life of man and his communal life that it takes years to really plumb them to the depths. He has brought spiritual food for the soul of the individual to help each one to find himself and become a finer and better developed personality. And also he has brought the laws and principles needed to enable all men to live in harmony together in a great united world. The guardian hopes you, together with, will do all in your power to help the believers to understand both aspects of the teaching and to develop both as individuals and as a community, an ever higher, finer way of life." So it's not just about the laws, dear friends. It's also the way we live. Okay? This is what he's saying. This is, he has brought spiritual food for the soul of the individual. Are we nourishing ourselves daily? Or are we just eating our own food, material food, every daily for sustenance? But are we spiritually nourishing ourselves? Okay, this is what the beloved guardian says. He has brought spiritual food for the soul of the individual to help one to find himself. We have to be on a quest to find our true reality. And remember, how many times did Baha'u'llah says that you have to delve into yourselves and find the pearls latent within you. And there's qualities and attributes latent within us. Remember the hidden word, noble have I created thee. Why dost thou abase thyself? So we're noble creations. There's qualities and attributes latent within us. Then how can we unlock these gems of inestimable value? Through education, study, deepening, reading, and having faith in him, reliance in him. We cannot just say, yeah, I'm just going to read this book and then, I'm going to get it. Do you have faith in him? Do you have belief, trust? This is qualities. This is reliance. So this is, he has brought spiritual food for the soul. Are you eating? Or are you just going to the food source and then you're like, yeah, there's the food source. I believe, that's the food source. And then you turn away from the food source. Or are you actually consuming it? Or are you just nibbling? Some people just are nibblers. How much are you actually consuming regularly? That's something that I say these things, but I want you to think about it, in your regular routine. And I say this because I want you guys to bring it to your conscious thought. Remember, we talked about the study of the writings, and it should be like a spiritual muscle, our spiritual muscle. Exercise, should be something that we do regularly, or else our muscles atrophy. Are we regularly working our spiritual muscles? And if we do not eat every day, we become weak. Here, the beloved guardian is saying, I have brought you spiritual food. If we are not eating every day, we start feeling weak. We start getting headaches. We start feeling, slow of ability, and we start feeling real hunger and suffering. So are you feeling the suffering of spiritual hunger if you are not abiding by, delving into this spiritual feast that is being given to us? This is, so these are questions I want you to think about, that this is being given to us. And the word that I love that the beloved guardian pulled here is plumb. What a cool word. He says that we should plumb. And when I think of plumb, I think of plumbers, going deep and unlocking, going into finding these kind of, he says, the root of the source, years to really plumb them to the depths. The guardian hopes you, together with, will do all in your power, to help the believers to understand both aspects of the teachings, not only the spiritual, as well as the laws, the teachings. They go hand in hand, okay? Here's another awesome quote. I share this one with you, dear friends. This is from the beloved guardian, 20th November, 1955. The teachings of Baha'u'llah will establish a new way of life for humanity. New way of life for humanity. Those who are Baha'is must endeavor to establish this way of life just as rapidly as possible. Now that the hour has arrived when the Baha'i faith is gaining prominence and is being viewed and reviewed by so many peoples, it is necessary that the adherents of the faith should live up to the high ideals of this faith in every way. In this way, they can demonstrate that the Baha'i faith does create a new way of life, which brings the individual a complete association with the will of God, and thus the establishment of a peaceful and universal society. Divisional attachments are of man, while universal service is of God. The guardian is now anxious that all the friends achieve a universal consciousness and a universal way of life. So again, we're stressing in these paragraphs 59 through 62. Now the beloved guardian is saying, these three weapons that he has been stressing from the very beginning of the advent of divine justice, this rectitude of conduct, this chaste and holy life, this freedom from racial prejudice, is all about bringing in a new race of man, the transformation of the inner life. And here in this extract from the beloved guardian, not obviously in Advent of Divine Justice, because that was written in 1938, but this was written in 1955. But what does he say? He says the teachings of Baha'u'llah establish a new way of life. This is a completely new paradigm. It's a complete shift, and it's a new creation. And those who are Baha'is must do what? Establish this way of life as rapidly as possible. This is what we have to do. We cannot saunter. We cannot waffle. We cannot vacillate. We have to rush for the transformation of our inner life. This is what the beloved guardian says. We have to rush as rapidly as possible because the world is aching. The world is dying. I mean, God, every other day there's another war on the scenes. I mean, really. Turn on the news, dear friends. There's another war on the horizon every other day. And now we're on the verge of another major world catastrophe. I don't even have to name the name, but you all are aware of what is going on in the world. These crises we're on the brink of a disaster of enormous scale. That's why the beloved guardian has said and called upon the friends for the friends, the American Baha'i community, in this pivotal, seminal document, The Advent of Divine Justice, that the Baha'i community has to set the standard of the transformation of the inner life, to be that beacon of light. We were at the end of paragraph 59. The beloved guardian emphasizes that the perfection and wise utilization of the spiritual prerequisites, these weapons, will prepare this community more than any other plan or material resources to help bring into operation the world order of Baha'u'llah. This is so important. I mean, look at, in your life, how many plans you have seen, we just finished up the 12-month plan, the 5-year plans, the 4-month, the 4-year plan, going all the way back, right? 7-year plan, 9-year plan, 10-year crusade, going all the way back. 7-year plan, 7-year plan. And then we've been going through all these plans. But what is even more, and will prepare the world more for launching into the world order of Baha'u'llah, this Baha'i world commonwealth, even more than any of these plans. It is the preparation of the friends, honing these abilities, these skills, which are the prerequisites for bringing about this oneness of humanity, the world order of Baha'u'llah. And these are working, refining the rectitude of conduct in our lives, refining our true inner life and self, becoming a chaste and holy individual, and working to have that freedom from racial prejudices, where your eyes not only see the entire beauty and spectrum of humanity, right? This is what we should see. We don't say, oh, I'm free from racial prejudices, I don't see color. That's the wrong attitude. Of course we all see color. Color is beautiful. Color is beautiful. We should celebrate color, celebrate the diversity of humanity, and revel in it. In fact, we should invite all the colors into our banquet, just like His Holiness Abdul Baha said, where is Mr. Louis Gregory? We should revel in it and celebrate it. As a Baha'i, we should understand and stand up for the minorities, just like the beloved guardian said, in our last past section. Dear friends, it is a shift in attitude. It is to be a champion of racial justice, not a passive sitting back and letting others kind of do it and waiting for them to do it. It's a shift in attitude. This is what a new race of man is. When you take up the weapon and say, I am a Baha'i, you cannot put the weapon back down, because you are now in the line of fire, as they say. And we're going to get into this, my dear friends. This is something so exciting. When you hold the weapon and say, I am a Baha'i, and are now in the line of attack, what happens? You will be tested. You will be tested. Because now he will want to test you. Are you true to what you are saying? Or are you just all talk? And this is very interesting. And what's so cool about this section is the beloved guardian, in this paragraphs 59 through 62, he says the American Bahá'ís are going to be tested like none other. And so that's why in this specific section, I wanted to include the entire scope of what it means to be tested, have tribulations and suffering. Okay? And when I'm talking about tested like none other, I'm not talking about physical tests, okay? Those physical tests which the friends in the cradle of the faith suffered, God, they were blown from cannons and tortured and extreme sufferings, martyrdom. But the friends in the West are going to be tested like none other with mental tests. And we're going to be exploring all the extracts from the writings on this. So it's going to be very interesting. The revelation of His Holiness Baha'u'llah should be assimilated into our inner being and reflected into our thoughts, attitudes, and deeds. This is the process of spiritual transformation through which we acquire and develop the weapons we need to fight the long-standing evils that beset our own community and thereafter expunge them from the lives of people in the wider society. This is a very important paragraph. Obviously, it's not from the writings. These are from my thoughts and writings. But why I say this is very important, because I see so many friends, not only Bahá'ís or whatever. Remember, Bahá'ís is just the latest name of the faith of God. And remember, all of this is the faith of God. And we shouldn't, pigeonhole this and that. Members of faith, what often happens is they say, I am a whatever, whether it's Bahá'í, Christian, Muslim, whatever, on that day of God, whichever is their holy day. If they're a Christian, they say, I am a Christian, and I go to church on a Sunday, and then the rest of the week, they do not per se practice their faith. They're not true to the Lord, His Holiness Jesus Christ, what is said. Or a Muslim, whatever, and as well as a Bahá'í. And they may go to, Sunday school or what, and they say, and then they act very good around the Bahá'ís, or they go to 19-day feast, they act good, and then the rest of the week, it's about inner life, dear friends. Inner life, when no one is watching you. What is your character? Are you truly a Bahá'í in your heart of heart? This is what it takes to be transformation. Let's bring it home. We should not have, different spheres, our social life, our private life, our religious life, our work life, and then in these circles, at the very epicenter, the very center of the center should be the faith. Thy heart is my home. Sanctify it for my descent. Thy spirit is my place of revelation. Cleanse it for my manifestation. Baha'u'llah could have wanted anything. Remember, this is manifestation of God. He could have said, I want all the stars in the universe. That's mine, He could have asked for anything. But the only thing he asked for was thy heart. Your very heart. And he says, cleanse it. Cleanse it. And this is what Adventic Divine Justice is about. Making your heart clean. And so that his revelation so that he can have his home there. And that you, my dear friends, would be worthy of being an instrument, a voice piece for the magnification, to magnify his name. That's what it's about. Being true, being veritable, and to yourself, to say, I am a Baha'i, is this all talk, or is it in reality, in deeds? So it said, assimilate it into your inner being and reflect it in your thoughts. Remember, one of the qualities of the chaste and holy life was clean-mindedness, right? One of the 5 qualities, clean-mindedness. So the preparation of cleansing your inner life, your thoughts, your attitudes, your deeds. It's a process of spiritual transformation through which we acquire and develop these weapons. We need to fight the long-standing evils that beset our community, and therefore expunge them from the lives of people in the wider society. Okay, now we're transitioning. This is going into paragraph 60. So now, dear friends, we're getting into this very awesome part of now entering paragraph 60 of tribulations and tests. We're all tested at different degrees, different amounts. So let's get into this section. So I'm going to ask dear Scott if you could read this starting up for us.
Of these things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world.
Thank you, Scott. And if you could read on the left side.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that changed too. Okay. In paragraph 60, the beloved guardian describes the tribulations and tests that the American Bahá'ís would experience in conducting the twofold crusade against the evils within and outside of the community of believers. The nature of the turmoil, the persecutions described by Shoghi Effendi is intellectual and psychological, rather than the persecutions that were so sorely inflicted on the Persian Bahá'ís in the cradle of the faith.
Excellent. Thank you very much, dear Scott. So yes, so the beloved guardian is saying the tests that the Bahá'ís in the West, the American Bahá'ís, will be faced are going to be intellectual, mental, and psychological tests. Machinations, these lies will be hurled at the Bahá'ís, will test their level of faith, their staunchness. And so these will be incredible tests that will come to the Bahá'ís of America. This is from His Holiness Abdul Baha. It says, in a tablet addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Howard McNutt, Abdul Baha, while generalizing about the susceptibility of the Bahá'ís in Persia, none of whom recanted their faith, even under torture. This is what Abdul Baha stated. In brief, my purpose is to show that whatever call is raised or proclaimed in America, a group will doubtless gather around it. While on the other hand, the Oriental friends, the Bahá'ís, are firm like unto the immovable mountains. For 30 years have the violators striven to undermine the cause, but they have failed even to attract to their side their own kindred and relatives. That is why, undoubtedly in Persia, 20,000 Bahá'ís have been martyred and severe tests have been brought about. Yet praise be to God, not even a single soul among the friends wavered. So here, His Holiness Abdul Baha is talking about the incredible staunchness of the friends in Persia and talking about the martyrdoms and the incredible tests that they had to undergo, and talking about how they had such staunchness of faith that not even a single soul among the friends wavered. Truly staggering. Especially if you read the likes of the Dawnbreakers and reading the accounts of the horrific tortures and that these friends went through, that not even a single soul wavered. Not even wavered. I mean, it's like, you're just like, well, maybe should I, or, it's so much easier if I, not be tortured. I just, or just have any level of hesitation, right? These people were staunch to their death. And it's like, that is the type of character these friends have. And that is what we are called on to be, living martyrs, not giving our lives in the sense to go and physically die, but living martyrs. This is from the beloved guardian. As long as there will be life on earth, there will be also suffering in various forms and degrees. Suffering is both a reminder and a guide. It stimulates us better to adapt ourselves to our environmental conditions, and thus leads the way to self-improvement. In every suffering, one can find a meaning and a wisdom. So suffering has a purpose. This is from the Beloved Guardian. It has a purpose. It is both a reminder and a guide. It stimulates us better to adapt ourselves to the environmental conditions. So in essence, it's good for us. Suffering, in essence, stimulates a change. Just like, here's an example. When the little egg of a caterpillar is growing, is there, it has to start, it has to go and eat a lot to become a caterpillar. Okay? It has to eat far more than it can. It has to constantly find food, scurry around, find food, and eat enormous amounts of food. It's not even pleasant for the poor little creature, but it constantly has to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, eat and eat, eat and eat, eat and eat. It's not pleasant. It's not comfortable. Eventually, it has to reach that stage of called a pupae or a pupa. Now, in the pupa sense, it's now in a transformational area. Even scientists say this is actually a period of suffering for the little thing. It's not comfortable even in there. It's a cramped, tiny little construct of spun, web around it. And if you open that prematurely and do not let the suffering go through its natural course, what will happen? It will emerge as a half-formed butterfly and not have the strength. Because why does it need to go through that suffering? Because it has to break out of that pupa by itself. And then it will have the strength of the wings and all of its capacities. So the suffering there has a purpose. The growth emerging out into the world is necessary. So suffering is a reminder, it is a guide, it is essential for the growth of an individual. This is also a very interesting quote. This is from the words of Abdul Baha in answer to a question asked by Dr. Edward Getzinger during a brief interview at Haifa. This is what he writes, or stated actually. In this day, everyone must be tested. So that's why I put it in red. It was because it's like, what? In this day, everyone must be tested, as the time of the chosen ones to prove their worth is indeed very short. The day of attainment is drawing to a close for them. The first fruits must be ripened in spirit, mellowed in love, and consumed by their self-sacrifice and severance. None other are acceptable as first fruits, and all who fail to attain to the standard through the tests are relegated to the many who are called. I was watching the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't know if you've seen this recently, dear Scott and John, but in the movie, there's a scene where there's this giant goose eggs, and these golden eggs, they land on a scale, and if the eggs are good, it goes into the good. So and then it goes into the good. But if they knock on the egg, these little squirrels, if they knock on the egg and they deem it bad, it goes to the bad area. And I was thinking, I was like, this is very similar to the aspect of the inner life of the individual. And in this sense, in this, everyone is being tested. Are we a good egg or are we a bad egg? Very simple. It's not that hard, Is our inner life good or is it bad? Is it clouded? Is it murky? Is it covered with dust? Are we cleaning our inner life daily? Are we trying to perform acts of service? Are we trying to help others? Are we trying to better ourselves? Are we just trying? The Baha'i community. So now let's explore physical tests and how they're different than mental tests, and then the tests that the American Baha'i community. So as we either have read or studied, or our families have encountered this, the physical tests of the Persian Baha'i community. The Baha'i community is very familiar with the nature of physical tests. The Persian Baha'is have been subjected to physical tests since the time of the Blessed Bab. Enemies of the faith, determined to stop the progress of the faith and its numerical expansion, have used physical means to intimidate the followers of Baha'u'llah, to force them to abandon practicing their religion, or to convince them to recant their faith. Despite being the victims of numerous physical trials and tribulation, Persian Baha'is have remained firm in their belief. Their possessions have been confiscated, they have been arrested and jailed, they have been beaten by mobs, and as many as 20,000 of their followers have been killed because they would not recant their faith. And since the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, the physical persecution of the Baha'is has become systematic and built into government policies and laws. During the first decade after the revolution, more than 200 Baha'is were murdered or executed, and hundreds were imprisoned and tortured. Physical persecution has been extended to include dismissal from employment, denial of access to education, as well as other basic human rights. And some of the most basic human rights that we take for granted is burial, just to be buried. And this has been taken from the Baha'is. So they're not even allowed to have a Baha'i burial. So the Baha'i cemeteries are destroyed. Another right that we take for granted is our pensions. I mean, years of wonderful public servants, even working for the government. I mean, they lose everything, their property, their pensions, their livelihood, their businesses being removed from them, their lands. This is what has happened in Iran. And here we can see on the right, this is the house of the Bab in Shiraz. It was razed, destroyed by the Revolutionary Guardsmen. And below, this is one of the groups of the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran. And here you also, this was during a regular NSA meeting. Here you can see 11 persons were abducted during this raid. They were never seen again by their friends or family. So here's a quote I felt it was apt for this area. Burdens are the foundations of ease, and bitter things the forerunners of pleasure. So what we think is sufferings is literally like the tide. It's just coming. It goes out and we're like, where's the ocean gone? And then you're sad because you missed the ocean. But it is all, part and parcel of the ocean coming and going, coming and going. Burdens are the foundations of ease, and bitter things, the forerunners of pleasure. It's all part of life. Tribulations and sufferings actually is the part that tests your character and builds you. They're a guide, they're a path to create a better you. So it's essential. A mental test is different from a physical test. Now we're going to be exploring mental tests because the beloved guardian says that American Baha'is will be have these mental tests. In that its main aim, the mental test, is to undermine the faith of the believer and cause doubt in his heart. From the earliest years of his ministry, the beloved guardian referred to the inevitable mental tests that would be experienced by the Bahá'ís of the West, particularly in North America. One of the easiest places to find mental tests is on the internet. The internet is plagued with mental tests. I mean, it's not that hard to find them. I remember a wonderful talk by Mr. Stephen Birkeland, who's a member of the Universal House of Justice, when he was a counselor. He says the internet is literally like a minefield. You could be looking up a wonderful, presentation on, for example, the celebration of the birth of Baha'u'llah or something, right? And you're trying to do a compilation of quotes or extracts on, the celebration of the birth of Baha'u'llah, and you're pulling these different quotes, and lo and behold, you come across this site, and actually everything looks okay, right? And you're pulling quotes and extracts from it, and you put it in there, and then what happens? It actually happens to be a covenant breaker website, or it may not even be a covenant breaker website. It might be just someone who has left the faith, and they might be disgruntled or something, and it actually has something that what it does, it plants the seeds of doubt within your heart. You follow? And so this is what we have to be on guard. That's why the member of Mr. Stephen Birkeland said, he says the websites, because we immediately, whatever we read immediately enters us, and then it goes to here. It goes here, it goes here. And so we take everything for literal whenever we're reading it, and we think, yeah, that's it. And how they, covenant breakers, and as well as individuals that have either been excommunicated or left the faith and want to sow seeds of dissension and strife and doubt, what they do is they tie truths with untruths. So they're very surreptitious. They're clever in how they do it. So they say truth, 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 falsehood, truth, 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 falsehood. And so the machinations and lies get woven in, and that creates doubt. That creates, you're like, yeah, I'm not sure about this because that doesn't make sense. I don't believe, and the more that you read of their writings, it creates doubt in your heart. And you can never undoubt that because that is there. It's planted in your heart. It's literally like the seed is there. And the eye has now a different bias now, your inner eye. This is from the beloved guardian. In a message sent to the American believers, 21st January 1922. This is what he wrote. He says, how dearly all the holy leaves cherish that memory of the departed master, as he commented upon the fresh tidings that poured in from that continent, admiring the untiring activity of the friends, the complete subordination of their material interests to those of the cause, the remarkable spread of the movement in their midst, and their staunch firmness in the covenant of Baha'u'llah. It is these encouraging reflections of the Master about his loved ones in America and the tests, intellectual rather than physical, which he said he would send them to purify them and make ever brighter than before. It is these comments and promises of his that make of the movement in that land such a potential force in the world today. The beloved Master's cable to the friends in that region is a clear indication of the presence of those counteracting forces that may usher in those storms of tests. It says storms, not storm, storms of tests that the Master himself has said will ultimately be for the good of the cause in that land. So these tests, these recurrent storms, are for the purpose of purifying them and making ever brighter than before. These storms are for purification of the inner life and character. And here, the beloved guardian is praising and lauding this American Baha'i community for their untiring activity, complete subordination, staunchness, and firmness in the covenant of Baha'u'llah. If you recall, when we were studying paragraph 16, and we also did our full study of America and the Most Great Peace, if you recall, the incredible history of the early American Baha'i community, how it came to be with Ibrahim Khairullah, and what tests that brought about on this early American Baha'i community. It was not a physical test in the sense of martyrdom, but it was what kind of test? It was a mental test that this community had to take on. And yes, the beloved guardian mentioned that over half of the community left. But after that episode, the American Baha'is went from strength to strength to strength to strength and won victory after victory. And this was a test for the purification of the Baha'i community. This was a necessity for this community. In a message dated 14th November, 1923, the beloved guardian pointed out, and yet how often we seem to forget the clear and repeated warnings of our beloved master, who in particular during the concluding years of his mission on earth, laid stress on the severe mental tests that would inevitably sweep over his loved ones of the West. Tests that would purge, purify, and prepare them for their noble mission in life. So what kind of tests are they? Severe. Oh my gosh. They're going to be severe. Severe mental tests that would inevitably sweep over the loved ones of the West. So they're not going to be like, it's not too bad. I can deal with them. You got to prepare, dear friends, if they're going to be severe mental tests. Right? So this is the repeated warnings of the beloved master. So the beloved guardian is re-emphasizing this, saying how often we seem to forget this. The repeated warnings of Abdul Baha, that Baha'is in America are going to have severe mental tests. And these tests are for the purpose of purging, purifying, and preparing them for the noble mission of life. It's not going to be easy, in other words. One of the words here we read in Advent of Divine Justice, right, was this long and thorny road, right, when we're talking about the aspect of racial prejudices. And it also mentioned in another writing in Citadel of Faith, it says long, thorny, and tortuous road. This is what it is. This road is not going to be easy. This is all part of the severe tests that we're going to be having to undergo. And this is from Abdul Baha, says, "O God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself." This is from the prayer, "O God, refresh and gladden my spirit." O God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself. And so on the left, this is from 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 7. It says, "These trials only test your faith to see whether or not it is strong and pure. Your faith is being tested as fire tests the gold and purifies it. And your faith is far more precious to the Lord than pure gold. So if your faith remains strong after being tested, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day of his return." And as you all know from Baha'u'llah, he says, O son of being, busy not thyself with this world, for with fire we test the gold, and with gold we test our servants. So here His Holiness Baha'u'llah is echoing from the Gospels, it says, that talking about tests. Scott, do you have a hand, please, as always?
Yeah, I just one of the in paragraph 60, I think it's the second sentence that starts off saying, their own instincts, no less than the fury of conservative forces. And it really struck me. I think I don't know if it was you or someone else I was listening to that talked about their own instincts, and that, you know, that may be their own fears, their own, you know, there's a whole variety of those, but that definitely is mental tests. But I never thought of the, you know, I thought it was, you know, maybe safety tests or whatever we can think of, I think are going to be interesting. Well, it may be something different, but that was pretty, for me, it's, that instincts are going to be different for each person. And so you can't, I don't know if you can even prepare for those things, but it just was, that's pretty insidious for me, that our own instincts will, which is typically instincts are, you know, we want to save our family, or we want to save our friends, or we ourselves want to be physically safe, if you will, or not hungry, or whatever all those Maslow laws are. But I just think that was something I had kind of glossed over for many readings, and just recently thinking that's profound for me. But.
Thank you, dear Scott. Absolutely. Yeah, instincts is a word, is at the very base of your character, you know, and it's how we often are. We think instincts that's how we operate as a species. It's our instincts, our animal instincts. And so if there is a transformation of the inner life, even at the instinctual level, so we don't even operate as our instincts are even different. And those instincts are going to be tested. For example, safety is an instinct, right? So we immediately try to protect ourselves, our family, whatever, right? For example, if you lose all your material possessions, because these tests are not going to be physical, we're assured of that from the beloved guardian in the West. But in the West, mental tests could suddenly occur. Material loss of possessions could be a reality. Imagine if the church suddenly, you know, goes onto the pulpits and says, the faith is of Satan. It is abhorrent in the sight of God. And then all the churches, you know, rise up, and then suddenly anyone, and there's proclamation that suddenly, and people that are work and aligned with the church, they fire you. In my state, you could be fired for any reason. It doesn't have to be, you know, any reason you could be fired. So the reality is, imagine loss of job, loss of income, loss of possessions. This is a reality, right? So imagine that. Now that is a test on your faith, right? You know, should I go and say, hey, I'm really not a Baha'i, you know, by the way, you know, and so these are the realities that in the West could suddenly spring upon us, you know, in the future, as the Baha'i faith really takes off in the West. So that's an example, but absolutely at the instinctual level, these things could be a reality. These are a couple more wonderful insights from these incredible people, Helen, Keller, and Mother Teresa, talking about this character and also in relation to tests. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. You cannot be saying, oh, I'm such a wonderful, wonderful, incredible Baha'i, but I've been living in a closet my whole life. And I've read all the Baha'i books, but, I really haven't left my house. It's a great house. And I've read all the Baha'i books and I get it. It makes sense to me. And then someone asks you, have you actually gone out and done anything? Have you served? Have you taught? Have you done any aspects of any? No, but I've stayed in my house and it's, that's where I am. So the aspect is you cannot develop yourself in ease and quiet. Takes suffering, takes tests. You have to enter into the field of sacrifice, into the field of teaching. You have to get out of yourself. You can't say, hey, I believe in the oneness of mankind, but do you have any other friends that are of any other color or race or background? No, I don't have any, but I believe in it. Why do we have to do that? Because that might be a test on our own character. It actually tests us. Do we have any prejudices within us? How the beloved guardian says, go outside of yourself. Embrace the whole world. And that reality will force you to confront any form of prejudice within your heart and then purge them, uproot them, and create this Baha'i faith as a garden of flowers. So you cannot just say, it's such a wonderful Baha'i community, but where's the diversity? So where's the diversity? So that's why it's very important. A sacrifice, this is from Mother Teresa, God bless her soul. This is what she writes. A sacrifice to be real must cost. It's going to be real, it must cost. It must hurt and must empty ourselves. Give yourself fully to God. He will use you to accomplish great things on the condition that you believe much more in his love than in your weakness. What a brilliant, insightful lady. And you can see the words of her sacrifice. A sacrifice to be real must cost, must hurt, must empty ourselves. I remember this, there was a story of this sacrifice of a friend. It was a monetary sacrifice. And this is when the friends were raising funds for the Mashal Askar, the house of worship in India. And they had raised a lot of money from when they were doing the calls for the funds around India, they had raised quite a sum of money. And there was one friend that had contributed quite a lot of money. And then the calls went to the different villages and a small sum of money had also been sent from one village. And then the call went to another village. This village was very poor, like really poor. And this village was, a lot of them were Baha'is. And when the call came for contributions for the house of worship in New Delhi, in India, to be erected, one of the shopkeepers, he sold everything. He sold everything, and he just had a small little carpet, and he placed that little sum of money in his carpet, rolled it up, and he gave that carpet. That was his only carpet. That was like his bed, right? And he's rolled that carpet up, and he gave that. That was his only possession of wealth, per se, apart from that little sum that was everything he had, and he gave it. And when that sum was received, from that point, they said the temple has been built. It was an incredible sacrifice of giving, of contribution. And it was a sacrifice of such monumental scale. And that's the reality is, it's not just how much are you giving, not only of monetary, but of time, of your life, of your energies. How much are you giving? How much are you investing in yourself? Right? We all have a soul. We all have as they say, a timetable here on earth. It's a short span. It's not a long period, relatively. And eventually, we'll all return to the dust. But the thing is, what we're assured of is that we all have souls. This is the first pit stop or the first train stop, as they say, on an incredible journey. This happened to be the first stop. So if this is the first stop, why are we, building mansions here, as they say, and thinking that we should keep all of this and building our house? That's why Baha'u'llah says this is ephemeral, transient dust. Why are you building your homes here? The soul is eternal. You're just a traveler. So what do we have to do here? We have a mission here. Our mission is for the soul, not for the body. The soul is the important thing. So that's why it's so important to feed the soul, because the soul has the journey, not the body. The body, my dad, I remember when I was very young, I don't know, many of you guys know my dad. He was such a wonderful. My dad, when he said, Ehsan, if I could, I wouldn't eat. Because the body is of really no value other than, feeding, being a vehicle for the soul. He said, I remember when I was very young, he said, if I could, I wouldn't even eat. But he says, my body has to have nutrition so that my body can work, so that my soul can have the opportunity so I can go read or recite or go do service for the cause. But he says, we shouldn't focus so much on our bodies, or the needs of our bodies, what is our bodies. And most of the time, that material focus is what we're focusing on. And that's why when I read Mother Teresa's words here, the sacrifice should be a real sacrifice. And often it's not. Often our sacrifices are And often our sacrifices are, how can I get my name glorified if I am going to do something, right? It's like we want our name to be elevated. So it's not a true sense of purity of motive, So it's not about elevation of our name. I remember my dad also said, Ehsan, he says, if you ever do something, don't do it so your name gets elevated, because it will only be elevated in this world. It won't be elevated in that world. Because God said, hey, you already got your credit here. Why should I give you more credit up there? So he says, don't do things for credit, because the reality is he is ready to give you the credit, but don't seek the credit. You see? You should seek to elevate humanity, bring happiness and joy, and it should be sacrificial. However afflictive your sufferings may be, stay ye undisturbed and with perfect confidence in the abounding grace of God. Brave ye the tempest of tribulations and fiery ordeals. This is one of the such a beautiful quote. It's just a one-liner, but it's that instruction of how to take on tests. It reminds me of, if we're obstinate and trying to take on the tests with we will be like those trees that are trying to fight the wind, and what happens? They get taken down. But if we're like the grasses or these things, they just wisp and move like that, because the tests are coming. We know that. We're assured of that. Undisturbed. Perfect confidence and reliance in him. Brave ye the tempest of tribulations and fiery ordeals. This is another coolest quote, and this is not a Baha'i quote, obviously, but it's so awesome. It says, when you're going through something hard and wonder where God is, remember the teacher is always quiet during the test. I love that quote. I mean, really, whenever we're going through something really hard, we're like, God, why are you not helping me? God, why don't, come on, God, and then maybe he's just right there. It's actually test time and he's being quiet and he's like, it's test time. Let's see, are you really up to the test? So the reality is we have to prove ourselves. We have to prove. If we say I'm a Baha'i, prove it. And he's constantly trying to test us. It's our character, our inner life. Are we who we say we are? So let's see some other these. So now we're getting to paragraph 60 through 62. The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi states that in conducting this twofold crusade, the Americans will encounter stiff resistance and suffer many setbacks, which should be resisted. And they include storms of abuse and ridicule, campaigns of condemnation and misrepresentation, an assault on their faith, deformation of their aims, derision towards their aspiration, scorn of their institutions, undermining of their authority, and resignation from the faith by a few. So this is the beloved guardian right here in Advent to Divine Justice saying what is coming to the American Bahá'ís. There's going to be storms of abuse and ridicule. The first time this happened, it happened in America, and it was in the city. I put it in that presentation.
Kenosha.
Kenosha. Thank you very much, Scott. Brilliant, Scott. It was in Kenosha. And it was when the Baha'i community of Kenosha grew. And it was, as mentioned in our study, Ibrahim Khairullah visited Kenosha, and the Baha'i community there grew through their classes and their studies. And it reached a point where it wasn't a huge Baha'i community, but it per se emerged out of obscurity. And so what happened was the churches got together and hired someone to go and write in the newspapers attacks of ridicule and condemnation against the Baha'i community. And this was the first time that it ever happened to the Baha'is in the West. So this is just the first case and example of organized, systematized, per se, defamation of coming from the churches. And that was in Kenosha. The beloved guardian says, this is going to happen widespread. This is going to happen to the Baha'i community in the American Baha'i community. There's going to be defamation. There's going to be assault on the faith, campaigns of condemnation, misrepresentation. And what will all of this do? It will cause some to vacillate. It will cause some to eventually resignate their faith in Baha'u'llah. The Baha'i community will be called upon to fight one of its fiercest battles to overcome resistance of the faith. If the Baha'i community is fully cleansed from the defilements it tries to remove, then the result will be a transformation and the complete reversal of attitude of the enemies of the faith. So that's why the beloved guardian is saying, prepare yourselves for this. Take on these weapons so your character, your inner life is transformed. And so when these tests come upon the Baha'i community, you will not vacillate. You will not be perturbed. You will not be cringing in fear or worried or stressed. And that's why in the quote from Abdul Baha he says, you will not be disturbed. You will have perfect confidence and reliance on. This is what is beloved guardian saying. This is from Mirza Ahmad Sohrab. This is a wonderful extract. This is in Abdul Baha in Egypt, okay? Abdul Baha in Egypt. So I pulled this because this is really cool. So I wanted to share this with you all. He says, we are living in the days in which the Spirit of the Lord is manifest and the rays of the Sun of reality evident. The divine Jerusalem has descended from heaven, and the glorious glad tidings are proclaimed. We must fashion our lives according to the heavenly teachings, live in a state of internal contentment, peruse the holy writings, and practice that which will be conducive to our own and to the world's prosperity. The Baha'i cause is much in need of real, earnest workers. The Baha'i cause is in much need of real, earnest workers, workers who will defy all opposition, meeting their antagonists with smiling faces and standing as firm rocks before the blowing of the winds of tests and of the storms of trials. How many old trees are uprooted by one wind, and how many ships have been wrecked by one storm? There are many lands athirst for the water of life. Let the friends of God irrigate them with vernal showers from the kingdom of Abha. There are many persons hungry for the heavenly bread. We must invite them to the banquet of the Lord. The lethargic must become active. The sleepy awakened. The deprived must receive a share of the inexhaustible favors, and the sweet music of the supreme concourse must be heard. We should be up and doing some kind of service, no matter how slight it is. Praise be to God that the orb of the center of covenant is shining and that his mercy is all encompassing. He is teaching and gently and lovingly guiding us in the right path. We all desire to serve him in some way and win his good pleasure by sincerely walking in his footsteps. We hope to become the signs of his compassion and the humble followers of his eternal law. So this is an extract from Abdul Baha in Egypt. I thought it was awesome. I included it here because it says here the Baha'i cause is in much need of real, earnest workers. Are we earnest? Are we a real worker? Workers who will defy all opposition, meeting their antagonists with smiling faces. I love that because now we're reading about opposition, right? And the tests that will be coming. How does Abdul Baha say we should handle them? With smiling faces and standing as firm rocks before the blowing of the winds of tests and the storms of trials. How many old trees are uprooted by one wind? How many ships have been wrecked by one storm? And wonderful analogy was like, as you'll never see a ship sink unless it lets the water in. So as long as you do not let the water in, the ship will stay afloat. So do not let the dust on problems of the world into your heart. Cleanse your heart, purify your heart, but do not let the evils and all the storms and all the problems of the world come and travail and perturb your heart. That's why keep your heart sanctified, keep your heart cleansed. And this was an awesome, I found this extract. This is from Promulgation of Universal Peace, but this is Abdul Baha's talk on the attacks by ministers. So this is what he states. He says, but after I leave, some people may arise in opposition, heaping persecutions upon you in their bitterness. And in the newspaper there may be articles published against the cause. Rest ye in the assurance of firmness. If such things do not happen, the fame of the cause will not become widespread, and the summons of God will not be heard. Consider the history of the past. Recall, for instance, the days of His Holiness Christ and the events subsequent thereto. But remember that these statements did not affect the cause of Christianity. On the contrary, Christianity advanced daily in power and potency. Day by day, the majesty of Christ grew in splendor and effulgence. Therefore, my purpose is to warn you and strengthen you against accusations, criticisms, revilings, and derision in newspaper articles or other publications. Be not disturbed by them. They are the very confirmation of the cause, the very source of upbuilding to the movement. May God confirm the day when a score of the ministers of the churches may arise and with bared heads cry at the top of their voices that the Bahá'ís are misguided. I would like to see that day, for that is the time when the cause of God will spread. Baha'u'llah has pronounced such as these the couriers, the heralds of the cause. They will proclaim from pulpits that the Bahá'ís are fools, that they are a wicked and unrighteous people, but be ye steadfast and unwavering in the cause of God. They will spread the message of Baha'u'llah. Isn't that interesting? Abdu'l-Baha calling the people that are in their role, thinking that they're attacking the cause. Abdu'l-Baha calls them the couriers, the heralds of the cause. They're the ones that will be proclaiming the cause from the pulpits, and they will be advancing the spread of the faith. So that was very interesting. So it says, do not be perturbed, do not worry or stress, but have faith, have confidence, and stay strong. And this again is written on behalf of the beloved guardian. This is October 1949. We find this in Unfolding Destiny. The beloved guardian here says he urges you to persevere and add up your accomplishments, rather to dwell on the dark side of things. Everyone's life has both a dark and a bright side. The master said, turn your back to the darkness and your face to me. We are followers of the light. Turn your back to the darkness and your face should face the light. That is from the beloved guardian. Okay, and moving on. Let us have dear Scott read this one also.
Gotta unmute. The beloved guardian sheds additional light on the obstacles faced by the American Baha'i community in their twofold crusade and how they can protect themselves against the inevitable mental tests. He states, quote, the gross materialism that engulfs the entire nation at the present hour, the attachments to worldly things that enshrouds the souls of men, the fears and anxieties that distract their minds, the pleasure and dissipations that fill their time, the prejudices and animosities that darken their outlook, the apathy and lethargy that paralyze their spiritual faculties. These are among the formidable obstacles that stand in the path of every would-be warrior in the service of Baha'u'llah. Obstacles which he must battle against and surmount in his crusade for the redemption of his own countrymen.
Excellently read, dear Scott. And on the right, if you also could so read that.
Yeah. Greatness is not found in possessions, power, position, or prestige. It is discovered in goodness, humility, service, and character.
Excellent. So here the beloved guardian is now wants the American Bahá'ís to understand what are these mental tests that are facing the American Baha'i community. So he calls them out. He says there's the gross materialism that is engulfing the entire nation at this present hour. The attachment to these worldly things that is enshrouding the souls of men. Then he goes on, he says the fears and anxieties that distract their minds, the pleasures and dissipations that fill their time, prejudices, animosities that darken their outlook, and the apathy and lethargy that paralyze their spiritual faculties. Here, the beloved guardians say, these are some of the most formidable obstacles that stand in the path of every would-be warrior in the service of Baha'u'llah. Obstacles which he must battle against and surmount in his crusade for the redemption of his own country. Gross materialism, fears and anxieties, prejudices, apathy, and lethargy. So these are all are on the mental scope, obstacles that are causing us to make us have a great leap forward in activity in the faith. These are what the beloved guardian is saying. These are our obstacles, and that we have to confront. Life is a constant struggle, not only against forces around us, but above all, against our own ego. It's from the beloved guardians. Life is a constant struggle, not only against forces around us, but above all, against our own ego. And in order to enjoy the coming spring, they must pass through the cold of winter. That was from His Holiness Abdul Baha. And so right now, many places in the Northeast were hit by quite a nor'easter. And so they're feeling the effects of a massive storm. But very soon, eventually, the storm will pass and the coming of spring will come again. So this is part of the cycle of life. In order to enjoy the coming spring, we have to pass through the cold of winter. And this, my dear friends, is from that incredible queen, Queen Marie of Romania, who was the first monarch who declared as a Baha'i. And this is her wisdom that she wrote in the Queen's Council. And she wrote about suffering. So because that's so apt for this section, I pulled it. And she wrote this February 26, 1926. So this is what she wrote. Suffering strengthens is the title. Suffering strengthens. Suffering strengthens, but do not confuse suffering with misery. Misery is an awful thing, and every one of us who lives comfortably should help relieve some misery, for hopeless misery is destruction and abominable even to contemplate in thought. Suffering strengthens. Only those who are not of true metal are marred by suffering. How many great men and women can we think of who not have been great at all, had it not been for their sorrows? To have it all things too easy is like lying all day upon a couch, feeding upon sweet things. The muscles run to fat and do not stand by us in the hour of need. We must keep our moral muscles tense, alert, and steely. When we see suffering coming, we must not waver, but face it squarely and take it standing up. We can all bear more than we think, and the more we bear and bear well, the more will our loved ones turn to us when darkness comes over them, for they know we can comfort and help. Nothing is more wonderful than to be able to lend a helping hand. This is from Queen Marie of Romania. What an incredible queen she was, truly, truly. Even before she declared her belief after the encounter with Miss Martha Root, she was an incredible queen. So this is her words in regards to suffering, that we must keep our moral muscles tense, alert, and steely. When we see suffering coming, we must not waver, but face it squarely and take it standing up. Isn't that reminiscent of the words of Abdul Baha? He says, do not be perturbed, do not, let me scroll back. I don't want to use my own words, but what did he say? He said right here, yeah, may stay ye undisturbed and with perfect confidence in the abounding grace of God. This is from and Queen Marie of Romania right here. He says, we must keep our moral muscles tense, alert, and steely. And when we see suffering coming, we must not waver, but face it squarely and take it standing up. Do not be disturbed. We can all bear more than we think. I laugh because I always remember, I think it was my dad, he said, Ehsan, it's very interesting that when we're all very religious when these sufferings happen. Whenever we're all seem to be very religious. We're always are all praying, whenever a crisis happens. Scott, you have a hand. Please go ahead.
There's recently, I think it was only a couple months ago, I saw a picture or a movie about Queen Marie on Netflix, and it was kind of an interesting historical aspect that I wasn't particularly aware of, but it was for those that don't know much about her or want to learn more.
Thank you. Yeah, she was quite a lady, and encourage the friends to research her and learn more. Okay, moving on. So these are a couple more extracts. The one on the left is from His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha, and the one on the right is from the beloved Guardian. It says, tests are a means by which a soul is measured as to its fitness and proven out by its own acts. God knows its fitness beforehand and also its unpreparedness. But man with an ego would not believe himself unfit unless proof were given him. I love that. He knows everything. So in the sense, he doesn't even have to, give the test. But because we don't believe God, he has to actually give us the test. I love that. So the tests are actually because we don't believe in him. So this is the only way that we can say we were tested. So that's from Abdu'l-Baha. God loves laughter. I think this is all part of his divine humor, actually. This actually. So this is from the beloved Guardian. He says, he strongly urges you not to dwell on yourself. Each one of us, if we look into our failures, is surely to feel unworthy and despondent. And this feeling only frustrates our constructive efforts and wastes time. The thing for us to focus on is the glory of the cause and the power of Baha'u'llah, which can make of a mere drop a surging sea. Don't dwell on the unpleasant things of life, aka yourself. Don't dwell on yourselves. Do not dwell on your failures. Do not dwell on the problems. Do not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. But what does the beloved Guardian says? He says you should focus on the glory of the cause and the power of Baha'u'llah. That's where we should center our energies and center our thoughts. We should focus our energies on the glory and magnification of the cause of Baha'u'llah. And that will cause what? It will cause us to be from this transformation of being a mere drop into a surging sea. And as every session, we read the prayer for the southern states, talking about the transformation of a drop into a surging sea and gnat into an eagle, this transformation. And this is what it is. This is what it is. And all of this is brought about by reliance in him. Reliance in him. And not reliance on our petty and, useless selves. If we constantly look at our failures, we will immediately feel dejected and despondent. We'll immediately think, hey, I'm not worthy. I can't do anything. How in God's name can I give a talk? Oh, how in God's name can I open my mouth? I don't know enough. A fireside? they're going to ask me so many questions. I can't do that. Oh, I don't know enough. I mean, how many times people will say, I just don't know enough. I don't know anything. I don't have time. I just can't do this. I mean, we come up with 1,001 excuses not to do something. So what happens is we're looking at ourselves, our miserable selves. We're looking and dwelling on our failures instead of what? Looking to the glory of the cause. And this is where we should look. It's literally like the horse is looking. If the horse looked down when it is being pulled, instead of looking up, what happens? Or looking left and right, it will go off course. The horse needs to keep its head straight, keep its vision. And this is why we're so infinitely blessed in this day and age to have the universal house of justice, the supreme body, the guiding body to help this Baha'i faith ever advance. Because God knows in a heartbeat, and even it's only Abdul Baha, he wrote, if we didn't have the supreme body, we would immediately have gone off course. 1,000 sects. There was actually a tablet of Abdul Baha, and when we get to later on the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha writes, if we didn't have this infallible guidance coming from, namely the center of the covenant, Abdul Baha writing, if I wasn't there, meaning the center of the covenant, this faith would have split into 1,000 sects. 1,000 sects. Abdul Baha writes this himself. He says, we are infinitely blessed to have this infallible protection of the covenant of Baha'u'llah. This is another wonderful quote that's so pertinent to this section on tests that I wanted to include. It says, if we could look into each other's hearts and understand the unique challenges each of us faces, I think we would treat each other much more gently, with much more love, patience, tolerance, and care. And that, my dear friends, is what Abdul Baha did. He truly listened. He immediately leapt into someone's heart and lived in their heart and felt their pains, their sorrows, their entire heart's desires. And that is, whenever we encounter anyone, we should be heart listeners. And I've met so many wonderful friends that are teachers of the cause. And they say, Ehsan, we should not even try to open our mouths to teach the cause. First and foremost, we should listen to their heart. Find what is ailing them. What do they need? Because we should not have a standard presentation of the cause or whatever. I'm going to a blueprint. I'm going to start opening with this or this or that and this or this or that. No, every person is unique. Every person is unique. You don't give the same medicine to this, to the same person. Every person is unique. So you find out what is their needs of that heart and love that heart and dive into their heart and occupy their heart. And then once you've really connected, having that heart-to-heart connection, and there's love there, then you can venture. I'm using the word venture to open up with your heart and show what your heart is filled with. You see, first you should get into their heart, and then once that connection is truly solid and veritable, that's why the House of Justice uses veritable friendships. And once that connection is there, then you can share your heart. But first you do their heart. So much so that they're overwhelmed with that love pouring forth from you. And then once they are just drowning in your love, then you open with your heart and share, but slowly, like a flower. Just slowly, eventually just the petals are just slowly coming off and showing the contents. You don't suddenly or fire hose them and say, oh, okay, here was Sheikh Ahmed and Sheikh Kazem, and we're going to do the whole full history. Oh, and by the way, there was this great guy, no, slow it down. Okay, I know you're super excited to get the faith out, and this person shows a degree of receptivity, and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to give them and present the faith of Baha'u'llah to them. It's the greatest jewel and gift. But this is the greatest gift. Present it with love, slowly, as if you're presenting a gift to a monarch, someone of great importance, gently. That's important too. Okay, this is on the left is from the Beloved Guardian, and on the right is another cool quote I just wanted to include. It says, we must always look ahead and seek to accomplish in the future what we may have failed to do in the past. Failures, tests, and trials, if we use them correctly, can become the means of purifying our spirit, strengthening our characters, and enable us to rise to greater heights of service. So this is, if we dwell on these failures, tests, and trials, they will become our obstacles. But the Beloved Guardian says, but if we look ahead and not dwell on these obstacles, what is the Beloved Guardian says? And these failures, even failures, these tests and trials, if we use them correctly, these become the means of purifying our spirit, strengthening our characters, and enabling us to rise to greater heights of service. This is very interesting. We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. And this is very interesting that even His Holiness Abdul Baha says that the American Bahá'ís will face severe mental tests, because he wants this American nation to really, really be purified and grow. This is from Abdul Baha, right? Beloved Guardian, if people only realized it, the inner life of the spirit is that which counts. This is all about the inner life. But they are so blinded by desires and so misled that they have brought upon themselves all the suffering we see at present in the world. Everything, every problem that is in the world is brought about by their blindness and the desires. Materialism, prejudices, you name it, all these mental tests that we're talked about are all the realities of sufferings that are being brought upon the world, and their lack of focus on the development of the inner life. And through that development of the inner life, that will bring about the transformation of the external conditions of all humanity, so that this world will become a flower garden of humanity, something so beautiful that people will truly, this world will become unified in working towards this oneness of humanity. And I remember the Beloved Guardian said, this will come about in stages. It's not like it's just going to be like, one day we wake up and, hey, yep, we're there. We're at the golden age. I did such a good job. Great job. High five. No, it's going to come about in stages. So that's why we have to every day not only work on ourselves, but also work to bring about a transformation in our community. Life is a constant struggle, not only against the forces around us, but above all, against our ego. I know we had that quote before, but I'm re-emphasizing it. We have to battle this ego, because this quote from the Beloved Guardian is really what Advent of Divine Justice is. It's really, again, synoptically, we are battling ourself. All of these weapons are these weapons that we're trying to get rectitude of conduct, chaste and holy life, freedom from racial prejudice. Where are we using these weapons? First, we're literally fighting ourselves. It's an inner battle. We're literally fighting ourselves. The weapons is to fight ourselves. And then once we conquer ourselves, then we can conquer, per se, the community. We can start working to create a more and more and more aligned, transformed Baha'i community. And then once that is done, right, then the Baha'i community can start working against the long entrenched evils in the greater society. So the Baha'i community will become such a beacon of light that it will become a symbol of hope for a world that is enveloped in darkness. And this is from Abdul Baha. Let your thoughts dwell on your own spiritual development and close your eyes to the deficiencies of other souls. Act ye in such wise, showing forth pure and goodly deeds and modesty and humility, that ye will cause others to be awakened. This is such an important quote. It's very simple words. Focus on your own spiritual development. Do not judge others. Do not look at others and make your judgments on the deficiencies of other souls. Do not cast judgment on anyone else. Focus on yourself. There's a saying, it says, do not look at the splinter in someone else's eye. Look at the log in your own eye, or something. That's a terrible paraphrasing, but you get the gist of it. You focus on your own deficiencies. Focus on your own spiritual development. Act ye in such a way, showing forth pure and goodly deeds, modesty, humility. Don't dwell on other people's. Don't focus on anyone else. Unless you're a parent and then you're trying to raise your children, okay? That's the only exception. And then you want to raise your children to be good. But apart from that, okay, that's the only exception. Okay? Apart from that, then you got to focus on your own spiritual development. And really the best way to show to your children is by being a good, role model. So again, work on yourselves. I give you an example. Like, for example, here's an example if you teach your kids, hey, you have to use good, kindly tongue. You teach your children kindly tongue, good words, and nice language and everything. And then in private character, you're cursing and using profanity. Because your team lost the sports, match or whatever. You're like, blah, 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 blah. And then your kids are like, what? That's not cool, because you have to act such a way, showing forth pure and goodly deeds. Consistency. Private character. You can't be like, oh, that's my Baha'i life. I'm teaching my kids and we're doing a good job. But then suddenly, in your true private life, you're not there. And that's why I have to internalize it. True transformation. This is, again, the beloved guardian. Look how many times they say the same things, right? And this is a small compilation on this subject, on tests. Okay, there's much big larger ones, but this is, you see how they keep reiterating the subject and hitting it home? You should not look at your limitations. Again, the beloved guardian, but derive full confidence at the thought that however limited your resources and capacities may be, your efforts will be reinforced by divine confirmations. How many times, the beloved guardian? Do not focus on your limitations, your limited capacities, whether it's your knowledge of the faith, your limited resources, any problem, do not focus on them. but have reliance on the big guy. Have reliance on him. Have full reliance. Turn towards Baha'u'llah. Turn towards him. And have faith. You know, if ever that opportunity comes, do not cringe or say, oh, there's a website called Baha'i.org, and that's all you share. You know, open your mouth, share from your heart your love for Baha'u'llah. You do not just, oh, here's a pamphlet and that's it. If that's all you're ever going to do. But share from your heart. Do not be so robotic in your presentation of Baha'u'llah. You know, but share from the heart. This is the greatest advice I can offer you. Fall in love with Baha'u'llah, fall deeply in love with Baha'u'llah. And then share that love from your heart of Baha'u'llah to the listener. And that, my dear friends, will move the listener. That's really how the friends in the early days of the faith did it. They weren't great scholars, but they genuinely fell in love with the teachings. They fell in love with the manifestation. They fell in love with Abdullah. They fell in love with the beloved guardian. So much so that when they opened their mouths, it was love pouring out. And the listener would be overwhelmed with the love. And they would hear it. And it would touch here. It would touch their hearts. Because you cannot dispute it. How can you dispute their love? It's like they love this. So there's no logic. And so they would be baffled. And then they would have to investigate it. You see? Very simple. So speak from the heart. That's really the greatest advice I can give you on teaching the cause. Don't forget that you are human. You are human. It's okay to have a meltdown. Just don't unpack and live there. Cry it out and then refocus where you're headed. We all have tests. We all have sufferings. We all have tribulations. We all have crises. We're human. It's part of our journey. But don't unpack and live there in the crisis and the suffering. How many times the beloved guardian says, don't dwell on that suffering. Don't stay focused on the obstacle. It's just one obstacle. Keep your eyes on the prize. You know, keep your eyes on the prize. Cry it out, then refocus where you're headed. Another really cool quote. You look in the mirror and sometimes you see a mess of a human being, but you don't see the lives you've touched or the people you've saved. You don't see all the love you've given freely or the extraordinary memories you've made. You're a book of beautiful moments and feelings. I thought that was such a cool quote. You know, we don't see that. We don't see all the lives we've impacted. We don't see this. So sometimes we actually may think our lives are meaningless or worthless, or we're not touching or doing anything impactful. But we don't think of all the words. You know, I share this anecdote. Let me check my time. Oh, we're getting close to the end of our session. I share this 2-second anecdote. And this was from, I've shared this before to the class, but this was a very short anecdote. There was one friend who passed away. And this friend, when he passed away, he came back. And it was recorded on a video, and his whole life flashed before his eyes. His whole life, just like that. And he says the only moment that was of value was when I held this elderly woman's hand and gave her an embrace. And I didn't even remember it, it was just a 2-second moment in my life. I held this woman's hand and gave her an embrace. And then he reflected on that moment. And he said, it was real. It was veritable. I genuinely wanted that lady to be happy. It came from here. I didn't have to embrace her or hug her or anything. But the rest of his life seemed like it was noise. It was just meaningless, But there was that little moment that it was real, and that's it. Dear friends, I'm sure our lives are filled with these moments. And that guy didn't even give any value to that moment. And it was just something in his life. But we are filled with these, and we should understand that we should fill them more with moments of value. That's really what it means to be a Baha'i. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Were it not for the tests, the courageous could not be separated from the cowardly. I love this quote. I mean, were it not for the tests, the courageous could not be separated from the cowardly. Such a cool quote, Abdul Baha. I mean, how would we know you're truly courageous? How would you know that you should be in the front ranks of the faith or sitting at the back? Are you truly courageous? And tests are the proof. But I love that quote also that we read earlier. It's because of, God is all-knowing and all-wise. He knew pre-everything and for everything. But it's because we humans, we don't really have that trust in everything. So he sends us tests anyway. That was like, what? I thought that was really cool. So anyway, men who suffer not attain no perfection. The plant must be pruned by the gardeners, is that one which, when the summer comes, will have the most beautiful blossoms and the most abundant fruit. That's so true. So the plant needs to be pruned, and the plant that is pruned the most will have the most beautiful blossoms, most abundant fruit. And I have a few more quotes to finish up this section. It says, failures, tests, and trials can become the means of purifying our spirits, strengthening our characters, and enable us to rise to greater heights of service. This is what it's all about. This is what the beloved guardian is talking about in these paragraphs 59 through 62. These mental tests that the American Baha'i community is going to face. These are for the purification of the American Baha'i community, to enable this American Baha'i community to rise to greater heights of service. And this is another cool quote I came across. Sometimes the strongest among us are the ones who smile through silent pain, cry behind closed doors, and fight battles nobody knows about. That's why we have to be understanding, really genuinely loving. We don't know what people are going through. And sometimes we we have our prejudices to people because they may not be acting in a way that, maybe per se normal. It's just because they might be going through something that God knows may be way overwhelming for us. But they're tasked with that test because they can handle it. That's what has been assured. We must not only be patient with others, infinitely patient, but also with our own poor selves. Be patient. Be patient with yourself. You'll get through whatever crisis, trial that is beset you. And this, if we suffer, it is the outcome of material things. And all the trials and troubles come from this world of illusion. And almost done with the last few slides. In a letter written on behalf of the beloved guardian to an individual believer dated the 14th February 1925, it stated, there is no need to fear opposition from without if the life within be sound and vigorous. Our Heavenly Father will always give us the strength to meet and overcome tests if we turn with all our hearts to Him, and difficulties, if they are met in the right spirit, only make us rely on God more firmly and completely. So here, there's no reason to even have any fear from without, meaning opposition from the outside. No reason to even have any level of fear. If we have reliance on Him, our Heavenly Father will always give us the strength to meet and overcome tests. And this is a quote from Malcolm X that I thought was very good here. There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson in how to improve your performance next. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a lesson, good or bad. Everything's a lesson. Every test, every trial, every tribulation, it's a lesson. It's a, and every failure is a lesson. But if we dwell on that, and live in there, then we are making that failure our home, and that is a wrong approach. And this is from Angelina Jolie. You see how the diversity of people I'm getting here? But this is from Angelina Jolie. What she says, without pain, there would be no suffering. Without suffering, we would never learn from our mistakes. To make it right, pain and suffering is the key to all windows. Without it, there is no way of life. So pain and suffering are essential, okay? Pain is the key to all windows. You have to have this. This is what we're assured of. This is the test. And again, be patient in the time of affliction and trial. Endure every difficulty and hardship with a dilated heart, attracted spirit, eloquent tongue, in remembrance of the mercy. So not only do the Bahá'í writings assure us, absolutely categorically assure us that we're going to be tested. They say categorically, the Baha'is of America are going to be tested. Okay, so that's categorical. But then the beloved guardian and His Holiness Abdul Baha gives us how to handle the tests. Here it says, be patient in the time of affliction and trial. Endure every difficulty and hardship with a dilated heart, attracted spirit, eloquent tongue, and remembrance of the merciful. And this is from Baha'u'llah, says, let not thine heart grieve over what hath befallen thee. Wert thou to scan the pages of the book of life, thou wouldst most certainly discover that which would dissipate thy sorrows and dissolve thine anguish. So do not grieve over what hath befallen thee. The tests of God are very severe. You should beseech and cry unto Him that you may be firm and steadfast during all temptations. And again, this is from the beloved guardian. Suffering is both a reminder and a guide. It stimulates us to better adapt ourselves to our environmental conditions and thus leads the way to self-improve. It's a reminder and a guide to make us better people. And remember that quote that we read earlier. It's the only way to prove if we are courageous or a coward, is by having tests. And this is a video, and I wanted to share because even in the animal world, they're also tested. So here we go.
A snake's eyes aren't very good, but they can detect movement. So if the hatchling keeps its nerve, it may just avoid detection.
I can't hear sound if you have sound. Yeah, Ehsan, if you have sound, you need to have yours unmuted.
Oh.
Yeah, we couldn't hear it. If there is sound, we can't hear it.
A near miraculous escape.
Yeah. So I wanted to share that just as a case example of this poor little lizard, you know, going through the tests one after another, and then suddenly, per se, almost ambushed by a whole pit of snakes. And this is sometimes in life, we seem like the trials and tests are just surrounding us from all directions. And it seems like that. But if that lizard gave up, when it suddenly got entangled and enwrapped by that snake, it just gave up. It would have been a goner. And that's why it kept fighting, it kept going, and eventually it escaped. And that is, dear friends, is we should keep our focus. We are assured that we're going to go through these tests. We are assured that they're going to be severe, and we should keep our focus and not be disturbed by them. And this is, I think, I have two more slides, and as we're just a few minutes now getting over, this is something beautiful, beautiful I came across. I wanted to share it in this session. It says, Baha'u'llah revealed prayers for the removal of difficulties. He told Abdullah Pasha, who had great difficulty in putting his trust in God, to repeat 19 times every day the following two verses. Go and tell the Vali from us, he told Abdullah Pasha, to put his trust wholly in God and repeat every day 19 times these two verses. He who puts his trust in God, God will suffice him. He who fears God, God will send him relief. So this is these two verses revealed by Baha'u'llah to for someone who had great difficulty putting his trust in God. And so, because he was being tested. So this was revealed for those who have difficulty putting trust in God. This is also another incredible quote, and this is the same test comes again in greater degree until it is shown that a former weakness has become a strength, and the power to overcome evil has been established. So we thought, hey, I've had this test before. Yeah, but you may have not passed it. Just like in a school, you got to retake that test. So this is the reality. The same test will come again in greater degree until it is shown that a former weakness has become a strength. And this is from Gary Larson, as always, says, you're kidding, I was struck by lightning too. So I thought that was humorous. These guys are talking about how they were struck by lightning and a meteor is about to strike them. And that's it, dear friends. So there we go. Paragraphs 59 through 62, covering the double crusade, the qualities of inner life that we should work to bring about a transformation in the inner life of the individual, and hence through this transformation will bring about a transformation in the external conditions, not only of the Baha'i community, but also in this double crusade to bring about a transformation in the lives of the greater society. And also we address the great length talking about the tests that the American Baha'i community will be going through, namely these mental tests, and also how to take on these mental tests and sufferings, the attitude that we should have. We should not be per se scared. We should not be, but we should have confidence and courage and have faith and reliance in him. So there we are, dear friends, paragraphs 59 through 62. Dear John, do we have any questions at this time? And I know, sorry, we ran a few minutes over, but there we are.
We just have the last prayer to state. If someone wants to share the prayer. The closing prayer, if someone would like to say the closing prayer.
Yes. Yes, I'll read it. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Here we go. Oh my God, thou seest me in my lowliness and weakness, occupied with the greatest undertaking, determined to raise thy word among the masses and to spread thy teachings among thy peoples. How can I succeed unless thou assist me with the breath of the Holy Spirit? Help me to triumph by the hosts of thy glorious kingdom and shower upon me thy confirmations, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into lights and suns. O my Lord, assist me with thy triumphant and effective might, so that my tongue may utter thy praises and attributes among all people, and my soul overflow with the wine of thy love and knowledge. Thou art the omnipotent and the doer of whatsoever thou willest. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week for the next session. That would be session number 28. We thank you for this session and we look forward to next week. That will be in February 6th. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, John.